Property Committee to order. First item is Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment. Nobody has approached either the clerk or I. Perfect timing.
Sorry.
So we will move on to the minutes from the July 23rd meeting. What are your wishes?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Gibbs, seconded by Jordan. Any discussion? If not, all is favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. Without objection, we're going to do some agenda gymnastics, where we'll take up item 6B1 first. Is he not? Are you, Bill, are you doing it? You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for having us. Myself and DA Whetstone will try and give you a little bit of history as to what we're talking about here. So obviously it's the abolishing the one FTO DA investigator position and creating one full-time equivalent deputy sheriff position. So there's a little bit of history. For many years, there's been investigators in the district attorney's office, and currently there's 2 part-time and 1 full-time down there, and their workload has changed and morphed more and more into law enforcement type duties than what it initially was, the position was initially classed for. So what that does is now they're going out into the field, relying on law enforcement investigations to further cases along, to assist primarily the smaller agencies in Marathon County with different investigations, primarily domestic violence and sexual assaults. And it augments that gap between law enforcement and the DA's office. And right now they're oftentimes going out there with the best tools that they have available to them, but we believe in talking to the district attorney that there's an opportunity where we can probably bridge that gap a little bit, have better liability, better policy procedures for them to operate under if they were operating under the guise of a deputy sheriff instead of the investigator. Their authority under the district attorney only takes them so far. With the sheriff's authority, it would take them further, if need be, outside of Marathon County to further an investigation. So that's kind of what's before you. I'll let DA Whetstone touch on a few things, and then if you guys have any questions, we'll just open it up and try and answer whatever you have. We were at Public Safety yesterday, and they moved it on, and now we're before you to look to do the exact same thing for full county board, and then we can, and the time frame, I guess I will, the time frame is we would like to move this yet this year. The sheriff's office, we would absorb the money needed for the rest of the year to put the investigator in the sheriff's office with our current budget. Going forward into 25, we would be looking for about $13,000 additional. That conversation was whether or not it was new money or whether or not it was going to be found within current budget, and it's going to be found within the current budget shuffle, but there is about $13,000 needed additional. Without that, I'll ask Teresa to.
Thanks. So the current investigator position is under the statutory authority of the district attorney, and that, as was alluded to, is oh boy, with some. We never take first name? Oh, okay. Let me get a hook to take me off here. Okay. That has limitations, and what we found was that actually our current investigators in the back, we were operating previously focusing on domestic violence cases because way back in the day we had a grant where we had a specialized prosecutor paid for to work on domestic violence cases, and then incorporated within that we used our investigator for those cases. Then our workload became such and our staffing became such that we couldn't, that grant went away. We couldn't focus anymore specifically on domestic violence cases and follow up for the investigator. Now, as I think I had stated along the way, if we could get our prosecutor staffing at a better level, we could go back to doing some of this really high quality, good work in investigations and supporting victims after the crimes are reported. They come in for prosecution. Oftentimes, we meet with victims and there's additional information that comes out as a result of meeting with the victim. Our investigator is able to help either follow up, be the conduit with law enforcement, or work with some of the smaller agencies within the county who are working with like part-time deputies, so on and so forth. We also have our deflection program that we're facilitating through our office, and she's been very integral in helping with safety and security for that. So the position is growing into the vision that I had always had for that position, but in the process of growing in our conversations with the Sheriff's Office and our investigator is an experienced law enforcement officer, it became clear that we were not doing right by the position and really by the law enforcement officer. We're not providing under that statutory authority the protections that a deputy sheriff would have for purposes of liability. We're not directing or having guidance for that investigator by way of sufficient policies. And for our office to create those policies would be duplicating work that the sheriff's office is already doing, already has set, trainings that they already have going on. So it was a wonderful experience, actually, one that I don't feel like I get good often enough, which is to have a collaboration with another criminal justice entity and not be territorial about whose employee this is, but rather try to figure out what the best solution is for outcomes within the criminal justice system and retention and safety of the individual employee. So I commend the Sheriff's Office for being willing to have this discussion. I would be then relinquishing our investigator position under my statutory authority, and it would be under the Sheriff's Office, and it would be assigned to our office because it is the right thing to do and the best practice in this particular circumstance. So that's kind of some of the history. I don't know if you have anything you want to add?
Sure. Thank you. From an administration perspective, it's really the second half of what DA Whetstone talked about. I think that resonates with me. Certainly I have the experience as a former prosecutor. I agree with everything she said as well. But on the kind of the liability and risk management side, risk mitigation side, the ability to have those policies, all that work that's already being done in the sheriff's office, it is entirely duplicative and very, woefully inefficient to have one person be responsible for all that, the training. This should sound a little bit familiar for some of you that have been on the board for a while. We did a very similar thing a number of years ago with the Parks Department. Our Parks, Rec, and Forestry Department had a park ranger position. That individual had a history in law enforcement, was with us for decades. When he retired, we evaluated that approach and moved that position essentially into the sheriff's office and had a similar agreement to what is in your packet beginning on page 165 with the memo and the agreement to follow. So the idea to essentially have the position housed in the sheriff's office to take on that expertise, but do the work based on from an operational perspective that the DA's office needs, very similar to what has worked exceedingly well with the Parks Department. So from an administration perspective, yes, it does come at some increased cost, but all of the increased efficiencies we would see and the mitigation of risk, I think, certainly outweighs it. So from my perspective, when we met and talked about this, makes total sense. We will have that conversation, as the chief deputy talked about whether there's $13,000 of new money that we would have to find to do that, or find ways within the sheriff's office to do it. But either way, it's the best position from an administration perspective. The next step pursuant to your ordinances is that this would go to the full board if you agreed. By statute in Chapter 59, the county board does, I mean, this is very operational, right, where a position lives, but by statute, you have authority through your position allocation process to setting the staffing levels in departments. So that's why it's before you. We would then build the budget for next year through our normal process.
Are there any questions of anyone? Chair Gibbs?
Just a probably a formality question. Wouldn't we require a budget transfer then from the DA's office for the remainder of the year for that position to the sheriff's department for the portion that's not the 13,000 annual cost increase?
No, I don't believe we'll ask for a transfer. We're just going to assume the wages, whatever the effective date, we would assume that on the rest of the year out of ours.
Chair Gibbs?
So I should just clarify, well, we can, through our workday system, have a position still essentially paid out of Teresa's budget. So there's the increase,
Right.
which is going to be a portion of
Right, the 13,000.
like $3,000 to $4,000. The sheriff's office will be able to absorb that. The remaining underlying costs for the position will simply be paid for out of the cost center within the DA's office. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, the only question I was going to say, if we weren't going to do the budget transfer and we weren't paying it out, and it was all coming out of the sheriff's department, then next year would be a bigger issue versus yeah, all right.
Are there any other questions? If not, what are your wishes? We have a motion by Supervisor Poole to recommend adoption in advance to the county board. Seconded by Supervisor Marshall. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. We're going to,
Thank you for your.
thank you.
That's up on the agenda. That was very nice.
We are going to move things around a little bit. If we could, we'll run next to 6A 2, claim disallowance. And then we will go to 6A 6. You need to grab a microphone, please. For the record, if you could just identify yourself too. Or if you want to come up.
I'll just come up.
There you go.
We know that one's working.
I'm Jamie Alberti here for Mike Pierner on the disallowance claim request. I believe it starts on page 150 of the packet. WMIC is recommending disallowance of this claim. I'm just wondering if you have any questions. The claim is set forth where it involves an injury on a playground and investigation done by myself did not find that there was any sort of issues with the playground that would have caused an injury that I could see. So that information was turned over to WMIC, and they furthered the investigation and decided to request the disallowance. So,
Are there any questions? The claim information is in the packet along with the recommendation from WMIC. What are your wishes? Chair Gibbs.
Make a motion to disallow the claim consistent with the recommendation from our insurance carrier.
Seconded. We have a second. by Supervisor Reynolds. So any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion to disallow the claim will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. We will now jump to item 6A6. You,
Sure, I can start, Mr. Chair, and then turn it over to Mr. Gisselman, who is here from the City of Wausau Historic Preservation Commission. And in your packet is a letter from the Historic Preservation Commission indicating that they desire to take up consideration of whether the what we refer to as the Lakeview Professional Plaza Building, or as is referred to in the letter as the Marathon County Home and Hospital Building, is being considered as a local Wausau historic landmark. And I can, bear with me, I'll find the letter in the packet after I search for it. But
page 155.
155. All right, thank you. All right. No, I got it. So the commission is taking that up. The Wausau Historic Preservation Commission is looking to take that up on August 28th. The initial step, again, is a public hearing, and Mr. Gisselman can talk through more about the process of the consideration by the City of Wausau. But in short, it goes through a number of various committees, beginning with the Preservation Commission before moving on to the City Plan Commission and ultimately to the City Council. The impact of that, any designation, I'll let Mr. Gisselman talk to, but in the letter it summarizes that there is some consideration given to the ability of the property owner to make exterior modifications and or demolish any building that is designated or so designated as a landmark. I've asked Corporation Counsel to kind of start to do an analysis of what that really entails and are there any substantive benefits to that designation. But again, we just received this letter not all that long ago and haven't been able to get that done. The public hearing is scheduled for near the end of this month, the 28th at 6 p.m., at which time there would be the opportunity for Marathon County to express its position relative to the request. So that's why we worked to get this on the agenda as promptly as we could to have that consideration to allow you to discuss that. Looking for anything else, Mr. Chair, or?
No, Gary, if you'd like to.
Well, sure. Thank you very much for having me. What you have before you is the what I referred to as the Marathon County Home and Hospital, built in 1927 for indigent people in the history in Marathon County at that time. This is a significant building, not only because of the agriculture that you can see before you, quite a Gothic building, built in 1927. It is one of the rare buildings that testament to the medical history of Marathon County. With regard to early on in the late 1890s, the Poor Farm on Town Line Road, Marathon County Poor Farm. Later on, the Marathon County Insane Asylum on the campus now of North Central Healthcare. There was a prior home and hospital that was burned down in 1926. This building was built in 1927. As Marathon County continued, the sanitarium out off of 72nd Avenue was also a part of the medical history of Marathon County at that time. This is one of the remaining buildings that really speak to the involvement of Marathon County into the health care as well as into the mental health care of Marathon County at that time into the early, specifically into the early parts of the 20th century. So So the Preservation Commission of the City of Wausau has decided that we really want to take a look at this building, the history, not only for its history, but it's for its architecture and its involvement really in the medical history of Marathon County. We don't have very many left. Memorial Hospital on Grand Avenue. So it does lend itself to that very important part of our history. So the Preservation Commission would agreed that we would declare a public hearing and see. We invite the owners and the neighborhood to this public hearing on the date, and listening to comments and also comments from Marathon County, and then the commission would vote on whether to proceed to the City of Wausau Plan Commission, and then after that, if it passes that, it moves on to the City of Wausau City Council. So there is a variety of steps involved in this. Some cautionary steps, just so that you know, the Historical Preservation Commission does have to have its ducks in order so that we can present a solid case to not only the Plan Commission to the Wausau City Council. And then after that, it does become part of the City of Wausau ordinances, and the protection of that. I can speak a little bit to that. If there's generally said that if there's some exterior work done to the building and it calling for a building permit, that would call for a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission passing on the appropriate work being done on the building, and then it goes back to the building inspector, whether we say yes or no, or advisory, or give advisory to the contractor or the owner of the building. So this always happens. Tomorrow afternoon, we have another ad hoc committee considering a certificate of appropriateness, because we do have a lot of landmarks within the City of Wausau. We have 4 historic districts within the City of Wausau: the Eau Claire Boulevard, Highland Park Boulevard, East Hill Historic District, and Warren Historic District, as well as 5. We have the Downtown Historic District also. So and a variety, of course, landmarks to stand alone in the City of Wausau. The Marathon County Park has some landmarks designated by the City of Wausau, the Cow Barn, the Judging Pavilion, and the Big Kitchen, as well as the Exhibition Building, all are local landmarks in Marathon Park. So Marathon County does own a variety of buildings that are also landmarked in the City of Wausau. So, and then and that's pretty much the process that happens. The public hearing gives you an opportunity also to publicly express what the commission will listen to, comments, if there's any, from the public with regard to this. So I know that's a very general overview of the ordinance and our process, but we feel this building is a very important part of our architectural history as well as our medical history, and we feel that it is an important landmark to preserve. The end result of a lot of older buildings is being razed. That's why we always try to watch out for very notable buildings within the city, and we feel that this is one that we want to give a little bit of protection to. Not saying that certificates of appropriateness and the county sometimes does want to tear it down. There are there is just safeguards and safeguards that protect the building itself. So with that, are there questions?
Are there any questions for Gary?
And then I think it's up to how you want to move forward. But yes.
Thank you. I wondered, maybe this is for the deputy administrator, is this the building that has the plumbing issues that you mentioned? And will this designation impact any of that upgrade?
It is the same building. As I read the letter, I'm not sure that it would affect that because a lot of that's going to be underground versus the exterior. But I don't really know for sure. So I'm certainly interested in the conversation and the types of information that they want to learn more about that building.
Chair Gibbs.
Thank you. So I guess this also probably goes to the deputy administrator. Has there been an analysis as to if the historical preservation designation is attached to the facility, what the potential increase or non-increase in cost and maintenance on the exterior facility would be, and effectively then passed on to the taxpayers?
At this point, no. We received a letter, and essentially, I'm waiting. I'm planning on attending the meeting so I can get answers to those types of questions. Also, to kind of provide some context in terms of how the building has been modified since. I mean, it certainly has its original sort of character and architecture to it, and the internal parts of the buildings are not really under this item as they're looking at it. But even on the exterior, there's been some modernizing of that, and so those are questions that I might just raise at that meeting, but I was thinking about them here too in terms of if we've already got, steel shingles, for instance. If you replace a shingle, do you have to then revert back to a more appropriate material, things like of that nature? And I don't know the answers to those questions yet, but plan to ask the questions anyhow.
So the issue before the committee is that we as the property committee have been notified of potential designation which could materially or could not materially impact our ability to do work on it in the future. The question is do we want to direct staff relative to participation in that meeting on the 28th? I think there was a July 16th deadline for submitting written comments. And what I'm hearing is we don't fully understand it. Gary, a question for you is that in light of the fact that there's a relatively short period of time, is it possible to have the discussion but then delay the decision to give us a chance to react and provide additional input based upon what comes out of that hearing?
I think it depends. So at this point in time, the hearing, the public hearing is declared. So it would depend really on the vote of the mood of the Preservation Commission at that time.
So
we can take the public hearing and we can delay the vote. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the same day, at the same time. So we can delay that vote. Once we take the vote, then the clock starts to tick with regard to presenting before the Plan Commission and the City Council. So we're sensitive to that timeline also.
All right. Any other questions? Chair Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, from my perspective, I think we need to understand what the limitations potentially and impacts have on maintenance costs long-term going forward before we can make recommendations. And so I would encourage the committee, when they take it up on the 28th, to at least hear that or allow us to provide, and get that additional information before starting that clock. Not saying that we're opposing but understanding what those impacts are long-term, because
And
it
just
does.
understand that you can make adjustments to the building itself. We're not saying that you can't make adjustments to the building, briefly said, when it comes to, for a certificate of appropriateness, it has to be in sympathy with regard to the building itself, because then if you decide to rip off the front entryway there and really destroy the essence of that building, that would be an issue to talk about. The back end towards the lake is that's more modern. I think just speaking on my own behalf, I think the front part facing the parking lot and the part that you have in front of you is the true historic part of that building. There's been some additions on that are not sympathetic to but that was back when. We're not debating that right now, but I'm just saying that the south side of the building is a different look. We're mostly concerned about the front end, and that more modern south end is, I'm not sure what to say about that. But you understand what
I'm not disagreeing, I'm just saying, I'm
Right.
just recommending that we at least have a total understanding of what those implications are at the county level. Again, it's a county facility currently, and because if it does increase costs and maintaining its structure, we need to understand that and potentially.
And we're very sensitive to.
Excuse me, Deputy Administrator Holtman,
No, I just wanted to say I do understand the comments being made about the different looks, and I can basically say for the group that there's no intention I know of for altering the exterior look to the place. I mean, there's already been the steel shingles and aluminum windows and doors in there, which are more modern. So those are some of the questions I would ask of the committee at the time to say, like, in the future, if those were to be repaired, what would that look like? But on the whole, the building is one that the county's invested a lot of funds into maintaining and keeping around. So in terms of its presence on the campus and how it looks and as it is now, from my perspective, the county's certainly interested in getting the return on the investment in terms of what's been put in that place. And like the sewer infrastructure piece, and there's one elevator to modernize. Once you're done with those, you're essentially done with all the major core issues of that building.
any other questions? If not, what are your wishes? We've got the item on the agenda. I think staff is looking for direction from us as to where go Chair Gibbs.
Yeah, I guess I would direct or recommend that administration attend that meeting and provide the context of the concerns that that at least maybe if it's just me that has expressed concerns about what those increased costs are and understanding what those impacts are before we essentially agree to, or even though we don't have potentially a say in it, I get that, but at least express our.
Actually, can I get you to make a motion, because you're taking the motion and the debate together, so. if you
Okay,
could
make
frame the
a motion recommending the administrator attend the meeting and express the concerns that have been raised.
Right. Is there a second? So we have a second on the motion. I'm sorry, Chair Gibbs. Go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, I can express concerns. The other part I don't want to lose, and I had this conversation with Mr. Gisselman in a meeting last week. The other part is that idea of give us the time to consider this. Would it be appropriate to make a request for the commission to delay action, perhaps for 60 days, to allow us to get that information and bring it back to this committee for you to make a more informed decision?
That was implied in my motion.
So the motion as amended would be to direct, you have the motion? Direct.
I can restate it. The motion was to direct administration to attend the hearing and express concerns relative to ongoing maintenance cost, as well as a request that the commission delay action for 60 days to allow the county to gather information.
All right, any discussion? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. All right, we will now move on. The auditor is en route. So do we want to, I would like to delay the things that are committee only to respect the people that are here. Do we want to, we can either go into closed session or do bug tussle? What are your, you want to do the closed session? All right, could we have them under item 6A3? What are your wishes? Go ahead. Chair Gibbs?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, parent 1, parent 3, for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating or the purchasing and public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, to wit, the discussion and strategy regarding the upcoming collective bargaining with the Deputy Sheriff's Association and the discussion of health clinic contract options.
Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Lambert. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Robinson. Marshall. Gibbs. Hart. Lemmer. Poole. Reynolds. Thank you.
And appropriate staff will be allowed to stay. And we will, if you could turn off the mic.